This was originally gonna be a video on the rabbit hole I went down trying to figure out how FPS Creator's random condition functions, but the script was poorly written and I never finished writing it. So instead, I thought I'd cover every random event in Slenderman's Shadow. Not only because I'm admittedly running out of good ideas for Slenderman's Shadow content, but also because I thought it'd be interesting and could possibly also clear up some misconceptions about the maps that might still be floating around nowadays. The random condition will randomly generate a number between 0 and the value of random. If the generated number matches that value, let's say 99, the corresponding action is triggered. Otherwise, the process repeats until the number 99 is eventually generated. If multiple lines with random conditions are set to trigger the same actions, the first line to generate the correct value takes priority. In the event of a tie, the topmost line wins. The chance of the correct value being generated is always 1 divided by the result of x plus 1, where x is a random value. In our example, that means the probability of triggering any given action is 1%. The syntax list I had originally used only said that the condition was true if a generated number from 0 to the value of random was 0, and I had to ask on the FPS Creator Discord server to get the true answer. This is the most mundane random event of the bunch for obvious reasons. The game checks if the player is moving and selects a footstep sound randomly from a set of audio clips at a fixed interval, and when the player is sprinting, those clips are played at a shorter interval. To randomize the spawn locations for the pages in Hospice, the keys in Mansion, and the photos in Prison, a script file was created for each possible location, assigning each location a unique number. In a separate script, the game randomly selects which value to assign to each variable. However, there's a quirk in Hospice that causes some of the pages to be unable to appear in certain locations, likely because the script destroys the last page entity before the game can randomize its location. In Mansion, the game also randomly determines whether the key found on the main floor leads to the basement or the upper floor. Elementary, Mansion, Claustrophobia, and 7th Street all have what's called a chase mechanic. Once the player has reached a certain amount of objects collected, normally 2/3, there's a random chance for this mechanic to trigger. When it does, the player gains infinite stamina while Slender rapidly teleports around them for about 20 seconds, 10 in Elementary. This chance increases the more items the player has. Interestingly, the script controlling the chase mechanic in Claustrophobia is identical to Mansion's, meaning the probability for the chase begins at 9 keys. This also results in a quirk where the mechanic can trigger when the player has 11 of 10 or even 12 of 10 keys. This mistake likely came from the map being rushed due to their tight release schedule with one map every 14 days, as specifically Claustrophobia has a couple other mistakes. The probability of the chase mechanic being triggered is as follows. In Elementary, there is a 12.5% chance of triggering the chase mechanic at 5 bears, around 14.29% chance to trigger it at 6 bears, around 16.67% chance to trigger it at 7 bears, and 25% chance to trigger it at 8 bears. In Mansion, there's a 12.5% chance to trigger it at 9 mementos, around a 14.29% chance to trigger it at 10 mementos, around a 16.67% chance to trigger it at 11 mementos, and a 20% chance to trigger it at 12 mementos. In Claustrophobia, which incorrectly has Mansion script for the chase mechanic, there is a 12.5% chance to trigger the mechanic at 9 keys, around a 14.29% chance to trigger it at 10 keys, and from Mansion's leftovers there's around a 16.67% chance to trigger the mechanic at 11 keys, and a 20% chance to trigger it at 12 keys, even though those are impossible to reach. In 7th Street, there's a 20% chance to trigger the mechanic at 6 pages, a 25% chance to trigger it at 7 pages, and around a 33.33% chance to trigger it at 8 pages. Mansion takes place during a thunderstorm, and you obviously can't have a thunderstorm without thunder. The lightning itself happens every 30.1 seconds and lasts for 1.4 seconds, but the thunder sound is picked randomly from 3 different sounds. This was what started the rabbit hole I went down trying to figure out how the random condition worked, because it was the first script using the condition that I really truly looked into. Only knowing what the syntax list had told me at the time, I never thought of the priority system and was confused how random equals 0, a 100% chance, was being overridden. It made a whole lot more sense when I finally learned how the condition really worked. That being said, here's the probability of each spawn along with a visual guide in form of a gameplay and a map. Spawn 1, which is in the upper right corner, has a 25% chance of being triggered. Spawn 2, which is near the lower right corner, has about a 33.33% chance if the above condition isn't met. Spawn 3, which is in the lower left corner, has a 50% chance to trigger if above conditions aren't met. and spawn 4, which is in the upper left corner, has a 100% chance to be triggered if above conditions aren't met. For about 5.5 years, the article for Claustrophobia on the Slenderman wiki claimed that the chance of opening the door increased by 10% with each key collected. However, the script reveals that this isn't accurate. The minimum number of keys required is actually 6 with a 20% success rate, and the probability only increases from there. Interestingly, some leftover code shows that the minimum was originally intended to be 4 keys. Although the probability for this isn't coded, we can logically conclude that it would have been around a 14.29% chance, increasing to around 16.67% with 5 keys. In prison, the breaking flashlight from Elementary was reintroduced. Instead of the flashlight breaking after 75 seconds though, it now has around a 0.99% chance to happen every second after 2 minutes have passed. After 25 seconds, the flashlight will turn on again. Slender will randomly teleport as he does, moving 500 units forwards or backwards on both the X and Z axes. There's a lot of conditions that need to be triggered to even reach this state, but once there, the following probabilities are active shown in X and Z coordinates. There's a 25% chance for the coordinates to be changed by 500 on both axes, around a 33.33% chance for the coordinates to be changed by 500 and -500 if the above condition isn't met. This one is actually faulty because Mark incorrectly wrote setVar equals state equals 3 instead of just state equals 3. There's a 50% chance for the coordinates to be changed by -500 and 500 if the above conditions aren't met. And finally, there's a 100% chance for the coordinates to be changed by -500 on both axes if the above conditions aren't met. This mechanic is kinda similar to the one I just covered. I actually discovered this when I coded the game to be seen from Slender's perspective. I thought that the camera's new position had broken the game and messed with Slender's movement method, but I later looked through the script that controlled Slender and found out it was fully intentional. Just like the last mechanic, there's a lot of conditions that need to be triggered to even reach this state, but once there, the following probabilities are active shown in X and Z coordinates. There's a 25% chance for the game to set Slender's position to 50 and -50, around a 33.33% chance for the game to set Slender's position to 3950 and -50 if the above condition isn't met. This one's actually faulty because of the same reason as the previous mechanic. Mark incorrectly wrote setVar equals state equals 3 instead of just state 3. There's a 50% chance for the game to set Slender's position to 3950, -3950 if the above conditions aren't met. And finally, there's a 100% chance for the game to set Slender's position to 50 and -3950 if the above conditions aren't met. This was only something I found recently while snooping around the files, originally thinking it was for the flashlight and that it just didn't work properly. It was only a few days ago that I actually decided to look into it purely for the sake of this video, when I found out it was meant for a fluorescent light near the dead-end room. I realized it was broken because it told the script to go to a non-existent state 10 instead of state 1. With this being the only mistake, I was easily able to fix it to see how it would look in game. Every 4 seconds, there's around a 0.99% chance for the light to turn on. Then with no specific interval, there's another circa 0.99% chance for it to turn off again, creating a flicker effect. In my opinion, this is one of the most interesting unused mechanics. And that's all the random events in Slenderman Shadow, at least in the FPS-C versions. There could be plenty more in the Unity remake, but I haven't gotten into learning or understanding C#, so I'm gonna leave that for someone else to cover. If you're interested in even more technical details about Slenderman Shadow, I'll include a link to a document that breaks down every single one of Slender's mechanics across all FPS-C maps in great detail. Just a heads up, it's very technical and over 100 pages long, but I plan to turn it into a more concise series one day, with each episode focusing on a different map. Other than that, there's not much left to say except thanks for watching, and good night.